So good afternoon, you guys. I want to review AEW for you guys, and I do want to say that with this YouTube channel, I really enjoy watching AEW, and I also offer a lot of suggestions on how AEW can improve. So definitely I'll review shows and I'll provide constructive criticisms, and I'll talk about some of the controversial things that AEW is doing, and also other wrestling shows are doing, and I also do travel videos and other things like that. So please like, share, and subscribe. So with AEW today, MJF opens and he and Rush have a brawl together. So it's MJF versus El Toro Blanco Rush. I really do not like them calling him El Toro Blanco Rush. Just call him MJF versus Rush. I was thinking that this is going to be a Falls Count Anywhere match, or they're going to start with like a brawl with them like fighting each other. But I also like them just starting a match in a ring, because usually a lot of times the AEW, they kind of have that thing where they fight all over the arena too much, or sometimes there's like a lot of hardcore spots. And I was kind of very happy in this match because they didn't like fight in the crowd, and then also they didn't like use a lot of chair spots or table spots. Like it didn't feel like a hardcore match. Like they're definitely trying to be not repetitive really, because again, if you fight in the crowd every single week, it does not become special. If you do your obligatory table spot, it does not become special. They exchange fist, and it has a very fast start. Ric Flair does the MJF does the Ric Flair strut, and I kind of like that too. Some people may say that's comic relief, but what MJF is doing is that he's a master manipulator, and he likes to antagonize people. That's his best part of his psychology, is just to be an asshole, really. So he's doing that to get in Rush's head, really. So I kind of like that. That's not just comic relief. That's just, telling Rush I can even just not take this match seriously. They exchange knife-edge chops, and you hear the Woo chant. Maybe MJF is teasing a feud between him and Jay Lethal, where Ric Flair is actually, involved with it. Or maybe you're going to see Ric Flair the faction, because MJF keeps teasing Ric Flair. Another thing that could happen is Jeff Jarrett is in the Owen Hart tournament. There's a wild card, so maybe that's going to be MJF versus Jeff Jarrett, because Jeff Jarrett's also famous for the Ric Flair struck. So there's definitely some foreshadowing. Rush headbutts MJF, and this causes MJF to bleed. Rush hits MJF while MJF is down the corner, and he kicks him in the jaw. Rush does a taunt, which is in a laydown pose, and I did not like that because that felt way too comical. That didn't work for his character. I like that they're both brawler wrestlers. They're not doing repetitive flips or pile driver spots. They're not fighting the crowd, and I didn't see a table spot or anything like that. So they're not trying to be. So they're just like they're into just wailing on each other, and that's very different for AEW, because there's way too much. Okay, we're going to do a bunch of pile drivers. We're going to do a bunch of sunset flip pile drivers. We're going to do a bunch of flippy pile drivers. We're going to do a bunch of luchador moves. No, this was just like two brawlers. Like, best example is this reminded me a lot of Robert Roode versus James Storm. This was two brawlers, and that's very different for AEW. So I like that they chose a style. And also their offense really worked. They just wanted to hurt and beat the hell out of each other. So they're choosing the offense that was appropriate for that. MJF uses a spike hammerlock DDT. MJF does a spike pile driver. Rush does a belly to belly into the ring ropes. MJF gets chance, so does Rush. This is actually going to make me a little sad, because I really don't know what they're going to do with Rush after this. Like, honestly, he needs a push. I was saying that I want to see Rush versus Mark Briscoe, and I also want to see Rush versus Takeshita. And I want to see Rush versus Mark Briscoe, or Takeshita versus Mark Briscoe, because Rush does have something. So the big worry is he going to be one of those people that are going to be on the back burner after this match? And that usually happens in AEW. Rush does a straight jack into a pile driver. I like the brawling moves. Rush attacks MJF against the barricade. And I like this because this works. Rush does Rush uses a camera cable, and he teases. So to me, I was like saying, since he's hitting with a camera table, are they going to have another match? Do a bull rope type of match. Rush tears up a ringside. Tears up one of the fan signs. So I think I see a lot of Rush trying to live up to the heel role. So definitely, he's just trying to be a heel, live up to that. So I really appreciate that. He's not he's acting like he's treating himself like a bigger deal, and that's what we need in wrestling. Roosh does a belly-to-belly suplex off ring apron, MJF falls to the floor, and I was saying, once again, sad if they give Roosh or LFAI no direction after this. What would happen if you made Roosh the 5th member of the Blood and Guts match for the EVPs? You know, put him in bigger spots because you see all the work he's putting in. MJF hits a brain buster and pins Roosh. This was a match where it was very hard to pick a winner because obviously, you know what, if MJF lost, it doesn't really hurt him because obviously this match really helps Roosh. The other issue is that they're having Hechicero versus MJF, and I do not like that match, and I'll talk about that in another video, but in short, you know, who the hell is Hechicero? Most people don't know who he is. You spent a couple weeks building Russo. Russo's had a couple of matches. I think you would get more out of MJF versus Russo in a bull rope match versus him facing a random luchador that doesn't speak English. You know, so I know that there's a faction of different people in Brian Cage and the Gates of Agony and all that, but I do kind of think that if you had like MJF versus Hechicero all the way until now, then Roosh versus MJF, and they had like this week and next week building a feud and then having a match. I think that would have been better. So, you know, it's definitely not putting MJF in a good position. He's fighting a wrestler that we don't really know who he is. So that's not good, really. You know, so it definitely was a downgrade. So next with the Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland promo, the crowd's massively over for Swerve. Will Ospreay and Swerve talk about being the best wrestler in the world. Swerve says Ospreay mentions the Don Callis family. Will Ospreay says he doesn't need the Don Callis and the Don Callis family. So Ospreay mentions all the people he defeated, and he says something like, "I have a hit list while you had hit row." Swerve talks about like how Ospreay's not willing to make the sacrifice. Swerve says, "You are nothing if you get injured at Forbidden Door." I did feel like, you know, they honestly didn't like rehearse this. There could have been like more things. They should have just rehearsed this more, because this felt like it was going off on different tangents. It didn't felt like a consistent argument. It felt like they were saying random things, really. And then also Swerve mentions Ospreay's relatives, and I was like saying that's a little stupid because is Swerve supposed to be the babyface or the heel, really? He's actually trying to antagonize Will Ospreay. One thing that I like about this is that after the promo, a bunch of members of the Don Callis family are angry because a bunch of people in the Don Callis family are angry because they actually do not like that they heard Ospreay say that they don't need that he doesn't need the Don Callis family anymore. So that could lead to Ospreay going through the Don Callis family, or maybe what happens is he gets beat down by the Don Callis family, or maybe he turns heel and then the Don Callis family and the EVPs become a super faction. There's a lot of directions, but I do appreciate this because obviously if somebody insults the faction that they're in, other people in that faction would be hearing about it. You would not see a situation where that would go ignored. So I appreciate the continuity, and that's the issue with AEW. Their issue is continuity, and this is great continuity. Ospreay insults the Don Callis family. This is a faction that he's actually a part of. Now they're going to have to react and respond, and we don't know what's going to happen, really. The next match, it was the worst match on the card. Mark Briscoe, Kyle O'Reilly, Dante Martin, Orange Cassidy, Konosuke Takeshita, Zack Sabre Jr., Kyle Fletcher, Roderick Strong. I do not like 8-man matches because, you know, that's very hard to follow. You know, who are we supposed to be cheering for? This is just a flippy match. You know, as Jim Cornette says, lazy booking. And honestly, if you see 8-man matches or 6 versus 6, it's hard to kind of like pick a wrestler and just say, okay, that wrestler is actually who we're cheering for. So Mark Briscoe hits Zack Sabre Jr. Zack Sabre Jr. Does the octopus hold on Orange Cassidy in the ropes. Dante Martin does a rope-to-rope jump and then dives onto the group. Roderick Strong does a enziguri onto the knee, does an enziguri on his knee to Kyle O'Reilly. This becomes spot after spot match. Orange Cassidy gets the pin, and out on Zack Sabre Jr., I believe. So I had a very hard time following this match because there was way too much flippy stuff. And when I see a match like this, I just agree with Jim Cornette's lazy booking. And then the other issue too is that Orange Cassidy gets a pinfall. What would happen if you actually had Zack Sabre Jr. pinfall Orange Cassidy? I mean, this will not hurt Orange Cassidy. Then people will be like, who's the Zack Sabre Jr. guy? Now he just got pinfall Orange Cassidy. That would be a better thing, really. So I really just don't like these matches because it's way too much action. You don't know who really to follow. It's really just to have flips and spots and feature people for the sake of featuring people. The next thing is that you had Mark Briscoe had a very fire promo and have a lot of energy. And once again, Mark Briscoe's not in the middle of the crowd, really. And, or the ring just doing that and hyping up the crowd. He needs to start doing that because that would make him a bigger deal. He's the ROH champion. What the fuck, really? If he's the ROH champion, shouldn't he be like talking like that in front of a crowd and just saying, and making himself a bigger deal? That makes the ROH title a bigger deal. So that's definitely not good that he does too many backstage promos. He's like Swerve. They both need to start doing promos in the ring, really, to hype up the crowd. As I was saying, I'd like to see Takeshita versus Mark Briscoe, Roosh versus Mark Briscoe. And I was also saying, too, Don Callis reaches out to Roosh, so you never know if Roosh is actually going to join the Don Callis family. He would do good with a manager. And then what I would say is, look through my notes, that the next match was the EVPs versus the Acclaimed. They did another thing where they actually did. It was actually funny this time where they cut the Acclaim's mic, and then you see Okada just say, "Oh, he's really sorry," and then he calls him a bitch, really. And it's actually funny because he doesn't speak English that well. Honestly, he reminds me of Trey Parker trying to be a Japanese man. Get ready, guy. I believe in you. And I understand English is his second language, but I think how he just called these guys bitches. It was funny. But the other issue is that you're seeing another problem with AEW. The Acclaimed get over with their promos and their mic promos. So what I would hope at Forbidden Door is that they do the Young Bucks versus the Acclaimed, and then also too Tony Khan's backstage and they get cut off, and Tony Khan lets them do it because they can't do this all the time. Because if you do this all the time, it becomes repetitive, and this becomes an excuse for the Acclaim not to actually think of them to rap. This is the thing that gets them over. Keep making them over. Max Caster does a crossbody in the EVPs. Nick Jackson does a swanton on Anthony Bowen's injured legs. That looked really brutal. He's targeting Anthony Bowen, who was injured. And they do a good job trying to get rid of Max Caster. So I really like this whole injuring Anthony Bowen. That's great storytelling. No, Anthony Bowen has to power through all of this. And it was really good underdog story. Okay, how's Anthony Bowen's going to beat the Young Bucks with an injury, and that they're trying to focus on his injury to end the match, and Anthony Bowen has to kind of power through all of that. One of the Young Bucks gets hit with a belt, and the Acclaim gets hit with the tag team belt, and the Acclaim hit their finishers and win. And this was a little predictable to me because obviously this happens in a lot of Young Buck matches or in a lot of heel matches. They're not allowed to have interference, so therefore they're going to lose, really, and that's not good because you need to have it so the Young Bucks actually win matches fair and square. Without any interference, because then you're saying, okay, if they have interference, they're obviously going to win. If they have interference, they're going to win, but every single time they play fair and square, they're going to lose, really. So they have to kind of learn not to do that, really. And then the other thing, too, is that they need to have a match at Forbidden Door. I believe the Acclaimed are from New York City, so obviously, 100%, this needs to be a match at Forbidden Door. If not, then fuck that. Chris Statlander versus Nyla Rose was next, and this is for the men and women Owen Hart tournament. So if you win this whole tournament, you get a match against Toni Storm, the AEW Women's Champion, at at Wembley Stadium in front of like 70,000 people. So, I'm going to do a couple of videos about this because I think that they did a bad job with picking who's going to be in the tournament. For the men's tournament, they have Pac. What has Pac done? They also have Jeff Jarrett. What has Jeff Jarrett done? And they also have Ray Phoenix. What has Ray Phoenix done? They should have booked this better. Give you guys a video on that. And I'm also going to do a video about the women's tournament because they actually have some people in it, like Serena Deeb. What the hell has Serena Deeb done? In it, so they could have picked this a lot better. Nyla Rose does a cannonball. Chris Statlander does an axe kick on Nyla Rose's back. Chris Statlander does a 450 attempt. Chris Statlander does a very sick pile driver on Nyla Rose and wins. So I felt really bad for Nyla Rose because obviously, Nyla Rose has a lot of potential. She's a strong, beautiful, sexy woman, Nyla Rose is, and Nyla Rose is extremely underrated. So this is kind of bad too. Like it seems like in AEW, if you have muscles, you lose. Or you're a bigger woman or a bigger person, you lose unless your name is Willow Nightingale. Next match was Daniel Garcia versus Red Titus. One thing that I want to say is that I did not like how Red Titus was beating down Daniel Garcia. This should have been Daniel Garcia getting 100% offense. Red Titus actually mocks the Daniel Garcia dance. I don't have no problem with that. But if Daniel Garcia was doing the dance too, I wouldn't like that because he should be booked more seriously. So try and get rid of the dancing thing. Daniel Garcia does a shotgun drop kick. Daniel Garcia does a neck breaker. Daniel Garcia hits a finisher and pinfall. The Gates of Agony and Hechicero faction attacked Daniel Garcia and Rocky Romero, and MJF comes out to save them. Hechicero gets an edge on MJF. Will Ospreay saves MJF. Will Ospreay and MJF on Marquise to have a dream match. Will Ospreay versus Daniel Garcia for the International Championship. If Will Ospreay has two matches at Forbidden Door, he opens the show with Daniel Garcia and then he ends with Swerve. I think that would be really good. Because if he loses, then a lot of people say, okay, it's because he had two matches. And then I said this is actually really bad because obviously we're ending with Will Ospreay, we're ending with MJF, we're not ending with Swerve. So it's like saying, as we said, that we're kind of seeing a CM Punk situation because when CM Punk held the WWE title, he was not headlining WrestleMania. It was Rock and John Cena that year, really. So they're not they don't believe in Swerve that much because obviously he should be ending this, not Will Ospreay. And then Swerve talked about being the AEW champion. He said he likes unpredictability. So this may also be trying to tease the audience into thinking that, okay, maybe Swerve's going to lose because I actually see the tension on Will Ospreay. The next match is Claudio Castagnoli versus Pac. Pac does a head scissors off the ring apron. Pac does a moonsault off the top rope. Cesaro does a sharpshooter and crossface. Pac, they do a bunch of Pac and Claudio do a bunch of inside cradle pinfalls, and then Cesaro loses out of nowhere. And I kind of said, that felt like a little anticlimactic. This should have been a bigger deal. They could have cut, maybe the 8-man match or whatever, and save that for Rampage or whatever, really. That this match should have had a lot more time, really, especially since this is going to be for your AEW title in front of 70,000 people. And once again, in the universe of AEW, just like in Pokemon, the high flyer is super effective against the strongman, so that's definitely not good. And then there was an exchange between Claudio Castagnoli and Bryan Danielson. So are they teasing a Claudio versus Bryan Danielson feud, or there's some reports that there is some unprofessionalism between both of them, but more so Cesaro, really. So if Cesaro's being a professional, fire his ass because we don't need this. We are not going to have Wembley. We're not going to have Brawl Out 3. This shit needs to stop, really. So if Cesaro's unprofessional, check his ass, really. Check his ass. They can even do Cesaro versus Okada if he feels like he's underappreciated, but don't do. So overall, I want to say that this was a really excellent show, and I also want to mention that they're putting a lot of things in place. They're setting up matches to Forbidden Door. I'm actually really excited, and I do understand that. I think that Forbidden Door is a special pay per view in the sense that it's supposed to be wrestlers from other companies facing AEW wrestlers. So CMLL and also New Japan Pro Wrestling, and also I think Stardom and other Japanese promotions. So definitely, I do understand that that's really the concept. They are trying to build up these matches. I do think that there are a lot of matches that they're not building up towards. Like you have Tetsuya Naito versus John Moxley. I've not seen anything towards that. You do need to have matches where there are wrestlers that everybody knows, like the Young Bucks, who I'll consider NJPW wrestlers, should be facing the Acclaim. So people like have that match to look forward to. I would say Okada versus Cesaro should happen. Bullet Club Gold versus the Patriarch, that should happen as well, really. So the Gates of Agony, maybe MJF picks a team of people. That should happen as well, really. Okada versus Roosh, or Okada versus, so maybe you can do Okada versus Daddy Ass or something like that. Like, give Okada a good opponent. Daddy Ass, because obviously he's part of the Acclaim, what is he going to be doing, So there's definitely matches that, should happen, and we'll see what happens with all this, So definitely, as I said, I think it was overall a really great show. I would kind of give it like a B+. There were significant problems too. Swerve did not end the show. I know some people may say that's also bad because it's Juneteenth. It's a black holiday. It'll be it's a bad look, really. Definitely they prefer Ospreay over Swerve Strickland. The next thing that I would say is that they prefer MJF over Swerve Strickland. Hechicero versus MJF is not going to be a good match. Because as I said, who the hell is Hechicero, and who the hell are a majority of these people on the roster? I did not review the Tony Storm versus Miya Shirakawa match because, again, and I know some people may not like me saying this, they have a lot of Japanese wrestlers that can't speak English that well, so they yell every word and they speak in a very stereotypical way. So they almost have to kind of find Japanese wrestlers that can speak English, or else it creates a stereotype that they all talk like Trey Parker trying to be a Japanese person. So and I know, like, I'm very particular about that, but honestly, if MJ like, hire Jimmy Wang Yang or other like wrestlers that can speak English that well, because you're also creating a stereotype that all Japanese people can't speak English that good. They all have that silly type of way of speaking. So and I know that may be a little offensive to some people, but I do think that it perpetuates a stereotype. So I would hope that, eventually, like, I'm happy that they push Asian wrestlers a lot more in AEW than they do in WWE, but you do have a lot of people who fit into that role of Asian people cannot speak the English language or the Queen's English that good. So I think that they also have to know that perpetuates a very bad stereotype that Asians can't speak English. So hopefully that over time they'll find Asian wrestlers that don't have that broken English type of thing, or they don't even make fun of the fact that they speak broken English, because honestly, it is a stereotype. And as I said, a majority of these wrestlers, you don't know who the hell they are. They are building some matches. They're trying to act like, that things are a bigger deal, and I really appreciate that. This does not feel like their issue that they had last year, where you're going to have 6 or 7 more matches added to the card with no build, really. If they have like a few more matches, especially with the Patriarch versus the House of Black, or the Patriarch versus the Bullet Club Gold, or the Acclaimed versus the Young Bucks, I would be really happy to see all that. So definitely, it's going in a great direction. Really good show, very thrilling. There's some twists to this. I really appreciate that. The ending with Pac winning, I appreciate that as well. That wasn't, that surprised me too, really. They also have to kind of get to a point where they have to make sure match results are not that predictable. Like, if you had Zack Sabre Jr. pin Pac, that pin on Orange Cassidy, that wouldn't be predictable. So overall, good show. They're going in the right directions. The issue is that some of the matches were predictable. They didn't push Swerve that well. Most of these people on Forbidden Door, you don't really know who they are. And most of them are people that, most of these people are people who can't speak English or get over to with an American audience that big, So I do think that, if you honestly did like TNA versus AEW, you would have had a way stronger show and a way stronger card. Or ROH versus AEW would have done something a little bit more stronger. But the way that they're doing it is, as I said, this is really a fans company for the sickos.